ऊपर करो नहीं तो कुछ भी नहीं खड़े हो गए ना मतलब हाँ आ रहा है चलो सर रोल रोल
President Trump made clear that Hong Kong was no longer autonomous. I certified the same. And we can see this is going to end up just being another communist-run city. It's unfortunate Hong Kong was such a special place where there were all of the freedoms that the people of Hong Kong were promised by the Chinese Communist Party. It's much like the promise they made to tell us the truth about where the coronavirus came from. We know it started in Wuhan. We know it came from China, and yet they covered it up for an awfully long time. It's these same kinds of broken promises that will lead the United States to take the right response with respect to Hong Kong's new national security law. We've already begun the process of revoking visas for people who made these decisions, and there will be a series of actions that the administration will take. We'd love to preserve the freedom in Hong Kong, but if we can't, we're going to hold Chinese Communist Party accountable.
And finally, Mr. Secretary, the huge Chinese app TikTok has about 30 million users in the United States, but it's been banned now by India, and Australia is considering the same action, saying that TikTok was full of mass surveillance and propaganda, and also that the app had the ability to feed information straight to Beijing. So kind of obvious question. If all that's the case, shouldn't we be considering right now, tonight, a ban on Chinese social media apps, especially TikTok?
Laura, your viewers should know we're taking this very seriously. We're certainly looking at it. We've worked on this very issue for a long time, whether it was the problems of having Huawei technology in your infrastructure. We've gone all over the world, and we're making real progress getting that out. We declared ZTE a danger to American national security. We've done all of these things with respect to Chinese apps on people's cell phones. I can assure you the United States will get this one right too, Laura. I don't want to get out in front of the president, but it's something we're looking at.
Would you recommend that people download that app on their phones tonight, tomorrow, anytime currently?
Only if you want your private information in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
Before I go on, let me be clear. This is not about the Chinese people. So when I speak of the threat from China, I mean the government of China and the Chinese Communist Party. To understand this threat and how we must act to respond to it, the American people should remember three things. First, we need to be clear-eyed about the scope of the Chinese government's ambition. The Chinese Communist Party believes it's in a generational fight to surpass our country in economic and technological leadership. Now that's sobering enough, but it's waging that fight not through legitimate innovation, not through fair and lawful competition, and not by giving their citizens the freedom of thought and speech and creativity that we treasure here in the United States. Instead, China is engaged in a whole-of-state effort to become the world's only superpower by any means necessary. The second thing the American people need to understand is that China uses a diverse range of sophisticated techniques, everything from cyber intrusions to corrupting trusted insiders. They've even engaged in outright physical theft, and they've pioneered an expansive approach to stealing innovation through a wide range of actors. Another tool China and the Chinese Communist Party use to manipulate Americans is what we call malign foreign influence. Malign foreign influence efforts are subversive, undeclared, criminal or coercive attempts to sway our government's policies, distort our country's public discourse, and undermine confidence in our democratic processes and values. China is engaged in a highly sophisticated malign foreign influence campaign, and its methods include bribery, blackmail, and covert deals. Chinese diplomats also use both open, naked economic pressure and seemingly independent middlemen to push China's preferences on American officials. The Chinese government is engaged in a broad, diverse campaign of theft and malign influence, and it can execute that campaign with authoritarian efficiency. And they're not subject to the righteous constraints of an open, democratic society or the rule of law. China, as led by the Chinese Communist Party, is going to continue to try to misappropriate our ideas, influence our policymakers, manipulate our public opinion, and steal our data. That when China violates our criminal laws and international norms, we are not going to tolerate. The FBI and our partners throughout the U.S. government will hold China accountable and protect our nation's innovation, ideas, and way of life. On the Chinese threat, on the seriousness of it, on the priority of it, on the need to come together to tackle the threat, I'm actually seeing a level of alignment and consensus, bipartisan, across the public and private sector, with academia and with foreign partners, in a way that I've never seen in my career.
In this case, what we have is the Chinese Communist Party lying, going back to November when they first spawned the virus, December and January when they hid the virus, December, January, February, when they were sending the virus around in aircraft to this country. So the CCP lied, and so far over 130,000 Americans have died. And I think, Trace, what's really important is we've got a lot of anger, anxiety, and fear because of the China virus out there. It's being directed against each other, but there's no party affiliation on the death certificates. This is not a domestic battle. What we need to understand is that it's China, the Chinese Communist Party, that is doing this to us. So what do we do about that? Well, first of all, let's take Hong Kong as a microcosm of that. For years, we allowed China to use Hong Kong as a way to basically exploit our financial markets and steal our jobs by using it as a platform for its unfair trade practices. Soon, President Trump has already announced in May 29th in the Rose Garden, we're going to strip every preferential treatment of Hong Kong away, which will essentially eliminate China's ability to use Hong Kong to harm us, even as we're standing up for the great people of Hong Kong. And we know now that even as we speak, they're trying to steal the intellectual property for vaccine development for the China virus. So, again, I don't want to get ahead of the president or the chief of staff, but there will be a series of actions taken over the next several weeks that will hold China accountable for the damage that it's doing to the American people. And don't forget, even as we speak, they're waging information warfare against this country. Clearly was that the trust in the Chinese Communist Party is over. Going forward in this relationship, they cannot be trusted. We have to hold them accountable, and that's what we're going to be doing with this president, who's the toughest president on the Chinese Communist Party that we've ever seen.
In relation to the Chinese ambassador's comments, this isn't a gross interference in domestic affairs. China freely assumed international obligations to the United Kingdom through the Joint Declaration, which is a treaty between China and the United Kingdom back in 1984, in relation to the way it would treat Hong Kong and in particular respect the autonomy and the freedoms. And therefore the important thing here, and it's a matter of trust, and lots of countries around the world are asking this question, does China live up to its international obligations? Because if they can't be trusted to keep their word on Hong Kong, why would they be trusted to live up to their wider international responsibilities? This is only the first wave, the first tranche of designations. We'll be making others in due course, but I'm not going to preempt what the decision will be, and it will be based on the evidence. And of course, the national security legislation has only just been enacted. But I think it is important with all of the countries that we want to engage with, that we've got this ability to hold individuals to account.
There are concerns one of the world's fastest growing social media platforms is posing a threat to our national security. TikTok is facing a possible ban in Australia over fears its Chinese owners are funneling users' data to their government.
Now Canberra has its eye on TikTok.
We're very concerned about foreign interference in social media.
We need to make sure that we are protecting our democracy.
Chinese company ByteDance owns the social media app, but behind the fun, there are concerns it's storing the private information, names, date of birth, location and facial recognition of millions of users, with the ability to be mined by the Chinese government.
TikTok appeared to have guidelines that saw them censor material about Tiananmen Square, saw them censor material about the Hong Kong protests. That kind of censorship is not consistent with Australia.
Christian Lindner, Sie fordern von der Bundesregierung eine Absage des verschobenen EU-China-Gipfels aus Protest gegen die neuen Gesetze für Hongkong. Die Bundesregierung argumentiert, dass man genau jetzt aber solche Gipfel braucht, um überhaupt Druck auf China ausüben zu können. Was ist denn an diesem Argument falsch aus Ihrer Sicht?
Natürlich muss es Dialog auch mit schwierigen Gesprächspartnern wie der Volksrepublik China geben. Und wir haben auch ein Interesse daran, dass wir auf der internationalen Bühne weiter auch mit China über wichtige Fragen sprechen können. Aber vor dem aktuellen Hintergrund, dass in Hongkong demokratische Mitwirkungsrechte beschnitten werden, dass man sich nicht mehr auf die Vertragssicherheit der Volksrepublik China verlassen kann, macht ein solcher Gipfel mit zeremoniell und großem Protokoll einen ganz falschen Eindruck. Auf der Arbeitsebene kann man sprechen, aber für diplomatische Ehren, wenn gleichzeitig demokratische Rechte beschnitten werden, ist jetzt wirklich nicht der richtige Zeitpunkt.
边护照持有者 有300多万人。英方在做出决定之前，最好要想一想，这些人如果都到了英国，他们要享受跟英国国民一样的工作、医疗、福利待遇。英国政府在做出最终决定之前，最好也要征求一下英国人民的意见，他们是怎么看待这个